Welcome, everybody, to a very, very exciting episode of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 101. And in this video, we're actually lucky enough to be joined by the one and only BRYAN INTIHAR himself, who, as you should all know, is the creative director of Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And I can't even express how thankful I am for PlayStation setting up this wonderful meeting between BRYAN and myself, but also thank you to BRYAN for even taking time out of your day to be a part of this interview, because I know how busy your schedule must be, especially with how Insomniac is receiving all the incredible feedback from the game and just seeing how the entire general public has it now. So how are you doing after all that huge reception has been out there from the general public? And again, thank you for even being here today.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. You know, when you put these games out, you've been building to this for so many years, and sorry, my phone was ringing. This is what happens when you do Zoom calls, right? Yeah. You're so stressed out because you're just like, are people gonna like it? You work on it for so long. There's so many people who care about this character. So like, there's definitely, I think at first there's a lot of like relief that okay, people seem to like the game for the most part, and then I think so there's a sense of relief, and then you're just hoping that then kind of the happiness and the reflecting comes in. So I think we're kind of, as we kind of wind down some of the media stuff, that I think now it's kind of just sort of reflecting on things. So yeah, so I think among the team, we're very happy.
That's awesome. Because just to give you like a serotonin boost is that after it released over like 2 weeks ago, it has also gained an over 90+ review score on Metacritic. It's also been deemed by a lot of gamers online as their own personal game of the year, myself included, and it is the fastest selling PlayStation Studios game in the entire history of PlayStation's lineup of exclusives. So it just shows how much love and care was poured into the game, and clearly the public is receiving it incredibly well. So congrats on all the massive success that entails, and I can't even imagine what that must mean for you and the whole team, like receiving all that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, I think really, I know me and you are doing the interview right now, but it really is a team of really hardworking people who've really done a lot and put a lot of heart and time into this, and a lot of effort into this game. So, I'm really just one of many, many people that put this game together. I would say I'm probably the least amount that put the game together, really. And it's just, I'm really happy for them that it's being received well. I think, we talk a lot about, scores and sales and everything, but I think, at the end of the day, you want to be able to look in the mirror and just ask yourself, did you do everything you possibly could? And I feel like, we did work really hard, and we did put a lot of effort into it. And I feel like, the fact that, for the most part, it seems like it's being well received and people are excited. And I know obviously there's always comments here and there. That's with anything, I would expect it. So I just, you build to this moment for so long, and then you're like, sometimes I feel like now, like you're at kind of a loss for words, because it's just kind of, you've been building for so long. You just kind of, it's fun. I think the biggest thing for me is, outside of reading comments here and there, just looking at the photo mode images and stuff like that, and getting notes from friends and family and developer friends playing through the game. I think that's when, it kind of gets to another level.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, like even where I'm at, funny enough, right now at San Francisco State University, the students in the building I'm living on campus all were freaking out when the game was releasing, and they're all like trying to get a whole like band of students together just to get excited and see the game be played live in front of the entire like student faculty, and it was awesome. So just seeing how much the community has been brought together from this game is astounding. And speaking of the game, there's a lot I want to discuss, but of course I don't want to take up your entire day. But starting with the story, which I believe is the most important part of this game, because we're dealing with not one, but two Spider-Men, with Peter and Miles, but also the entire supporting cast that the game features. And there's so much that's going on with this story, with introducing your own version of Kraven the Hunter, of course a massively beloved character with Venom. You're bringing in Harry Osborn into the story as an actual character that everyone will be able to interact with compared to what we saw in the first game, and also setting up so much stuff for what could happen, you know, potentially down the line. So how'd you go about really balancing all these characters' stories into one cohesive narrative without making it feel like it was too overstuffed or bloated? How'd you really try to go and find that sweet spot for everything that you included?
Yeah, I mean, first off, all the credit goes to the writers. I mean, they're the ones who put it together. They do a masterful job, and I think, you know, we kind of just, you know, started off with, you know, obviously we knew Venom was going to be a big focus, right? Like, you know, obviously we teased it at the end of the first game, and if the game was successful, hopefully we could, you know, could finally bring it to light. I think, but, you know, whether it was Spider-Man 1, Miles, you know, we kind of just went back to those, like, what was our focus? We wanted to deliver, you know, a great superhero adventure. So you want to have, you know, larger life characters like Kraven and Lizard and Venom, but not to forget, but really focus on the story outside the mask, the human story of all these characters, what their motivations are. You know, I think for me, you know, when we look at Harry, you know, it's really about, you know, his motivation is, you know, he wants to heal the world, right? And in the way he wants to heal himself. That's a very relatable motivation, right? It's just the way he goes about it, and the end of the game is not relatable, right? And I think, you know, we want to make sure that all our characters have relatable motivations. There's something you can connect to. So I think, you know, no matter the size, the scope, the scale of the game, the number of characters, that North Star of, you know, delivering a human story within the superhero fantasy it ends up being the guiding light that we need when we make writing decisions, story decisions, character arc decisions, and I think that the writing team did a really masterful job at it.
The medium of gaming, I also think, helps elaborate and enlighten that story even further because of how much longer you have to spend with these characters, and also being able to play as them directly, so you get to put yourself in the shoes of what Peter and Miles are experiencing in that point in time. And even in certain later points of the game, there's other characters that you can kind of interact as and see what they go through at different points of the narrative too, to really expand upon it and make you feel a lot more about what's going on in the city, and also their own personal stories of how they balance that duality as Spider-Man, which is what I love so much about the character and these games in particular. And speaking of the heart of the game, is the performances, is what I think is really shining through here with Marvel Spider-Man 2, with so many amazing actors and this huge star-studded cast with people like, of course, Yuri Lowenthal as Peter Parker and Najee Jeter as Miles, but then you have the A-listers as well, like Tony Todd as Venom, and lending his voice for that super horrific portrayal of that character in such an amazing way. What was it like for you really cultivating those performances and really trying to get the actors to bring out the side of the character that you wanted to see for the game, and in a way that maybe we haven't really seen before?
I think the trick is you don't cultivate. You let people who are really good at their job do it, and you create an avenue where they can do it. I think that's the thing. You know, Yuri knows the character as well as anybody. Najee knows the character as well as anybody. Mark Rolston knows Norman. Jim Perry learned by the time we were done with Kraven, Jim was telling us how Kraven should act and what he should do. Graham Phillips was telling us how Harry would react in some of those scenes, you know, at the beginning of like the final act of the game. If you hire really good people, your job is to get out of their freaking way and just to help support them, whether it's, you know, providing background information, you know, because we shoot out of order. You know, where have we been? Where are we going? What is the situation? My tendency, and I feel like the Insomniac tendency, is to not over direct when we're on set. We give them enough what they need to know, but I also want to see what they can do with it, because whatever we tell them to do, they can probably come up with something even better. And then, like, you know, whether it's Bobby Coddington, Lindsay Thompson, Bradley, you know, who are animation directors who help direct the characters, the actors on set, they do a really good job. So sometimes I'm just sitting back and just saying, like, that was cool, that, you know, or hey, here's an idea. But I think the thing is, you just create an environment where everybody can kind of express themselves and really be who they are, and take the characters they know or over time have learned to know, and to bring out performances that quite frankly, are better than anything we probably could ever imagine. And they just take the wonderful words that the writers have, and they find a way to make it their own. And when you combine the amazing writing with the incredible performances, with incredible direction from our animation team, to then obviously when those moments go through the cinematic process, again, it's really pretty special. And I think it's really fun to be on set because you do feel like you're literally sitting there staring at Miles and Peter Parker, even though they're wearing these cameras on their heads and stuff like that. It's pretty special.
I mean, I've seen just how dedicated even like Yuri Lowenthal and everyone in the cast, but even Najee Jeter and all the characters coming together to create these performances that really bring out something truly special with not just the medium of gaming, but also to see what these actors can do when they're all blending their performances into one soap opera almost of this incredible Spider-Man tale interwoven with how they're acting and bouncing off each other. When you were seeing them kind of like build those performances, did any one particular performances stand out to you the most when you were making the game and seeing where the story was headed?
I mean, I could probably say there's different moments for every actor, every character. Whether it's, I mean, are we talking spoilers here? Are we okay?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, all right. So I don't know, I'm not for me, when I think of, Graham's performance, I think of that moment where he says, "We are Venom" for the first time. And that scene in particular, I remember there was a bunch of us talking and him kind of saying, "Hey guys, I got this." And he did the take and win. I think of, that's one example. I think of, Jim and being Craven and those moments where he's killed by Venom, and that really moment where he says, "Thank you." You could really, really believe it, right? Or even those moments where I remember the scene where the cage comes down on Pete and Craven's talking to him. That was actually one of our audition scenes. A version of that was our audition scenes. That's the moment Yuri was there to test with Jim, and Jim crushed it, and he was actually that's when we knew he was Craven. That's when we knew. So I think I could talk about whether it's MJ, that moment where for me. When you just have characters standing around a table, you worry it's going to be slow and boring. But then you watch a scene like the one right before the final mission, where it's Pete, MJ, and Miles planning out the how they're going to take out in the final mission, and just the fun that Najee and Laura bring to that moment of the pieces, and then Pete and Yuri, and it's this is them standing around a table. And for them to that's probably one of my favorite scenes in the game, because it has kind of the heart, the humor, but also the stakes, right? And I think when you have characters who can deliver all of that in their performance, I'm eternally grateful that we've cast, I think, pretty well, and that the actors have taken whatever we have done and made it their own and made it better.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I was already completely enamored in the previous game's performances with Yuri and Najee in Marvel's Spider-Man 1 and Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, and seeing them both come together and have their own individual journeys that they go through and also blend together at various points was a true treat for me and every other Spider-Man fan to witness. And speaking of witnessing is, of course, like what you just mentioned with that whole cage scene with not only Peter as Spider-Man interacting with Craven, but that's where he's at his, I would say, lowest point with him in the black suit. He's at this point of just pure rage and fury and almost going to do the unthinkable. And a quote that you and Yuri have both repeatedly discussed about with the black suit is how it resembles addiction and what that does with someone being too, overcome with the amount of power that can be flooded into someone, and what that can do if they are, have all the power and none of the responsibility, but also how that power can turn you into something completely, feral and ugly. And I loved the boss fight between Peter and Miles specifically, because I think that's where it's at its highest, where these two lines in particular from Yuri, where he's saying, "You think I'm the problem, and I need this suit. It makes me a better Spider-Man." He's almost too dependent on it because he feels like he's nothing without it. And how did you go about culminating that entire aspect of the black suit? Because it's one of my personal favorite stories from Spider-Man comics of all time. and really pushing it to that far of an extent with those themes at play.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was definitely obviously a big focus of ours. I think, the black suit, the symbiote, the Venom story, I think is a good example of what we've kind of said from the beginning of this franchise is we want to respect the DNA of the franchise. We want to do things that people, quite frankly, if we don't do it right, they're going to be upset online, probably, right? We've never experienced that before. I think there's that. So you want to respect, hey, like these artists, these writers, they've created amazing things that people want to see and some more. But at the same time, we also just don't want to create the same story you've seen and read, So we try to find that balance. And I think the thing that we wanted to also not only explore the thing with the symbiote was not only how it impacted Peter, but how it impacted the people around him, the people he's closest to. So you see the impact on MJ and Miles and Rio, and even obviously you see on Harry. So I think it was not just about delivering the sense of addiction, but also like what does it happen to the people around them, not just in the sense like, essentially Peter loses himself. And I think you mentioned the line, I'm the problem. That's actually probably one of my favorite lines in the whole game, because I really think it kind of, and then you hear the symbiote voice repeat it in a way. So I think that it was really about finding the parts of the symbiote story that really resonate with fans and Marvel fans, but coming at it, it's just kind of exploring a different axis of it. So whether it's the impact on other people, who eventually ends up being the host of Venom, things like that, how can we put our own spin on things? So it's just, again, it's like that balancing act.
I was already so surprised at the very end of the first game where you teased Harry in the tank with the symbiote and thinking like there's no way they're going to go this route with making Harry Venom and to this extent, but again bringing that own original Insomniac twist to it to really spin things and give things a new breath of fresh air pretty much. And I think you guys nailed it. And specifically in the case of Venom, knowing how massively popular of a character he is and seeing how much inspiration and homage I think you paid to the character with different elements dragging from comics, with things like seeing Harry in the Agent Venom suit pretty much, and also giving him the giant wings at the very end of the last boss fight, and also being able to, of course, live the fantasy of playing as Venom was something I was begging for ever since day one, and thank God you guys included, because it was awesome seeing that. But was there any...
You would have been upset. You would have been online saying you didn't like it if we didn't have it, so you gotta make sure.
I probably might have, but it's there and it's awesome and is easily like my favorite part of the whole game. But when you were making your own version of Venom, also bringing in so much from the comics from like artists like Todd McFarlane and Brian Michael Bendis, and of course Donny Cates, Ryan Stegman. How'd you go about really making your version of the character give that Insomniac twist, like you said, like being new and fresh, but also still staying true to what the character is?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, when it comes in particular to Venom, I think you have to be very careful, because there are people who don't like comics but like Venom. Like there are people like who just like Venom, and I think it has to do with partly his character design. I think he has a really cool character design. I think his powers are really, it's really, really cool. He's got a great voice. I think for the Marvel fans, he also is he's so different from Peter, that different from Peter Miles, that he just has that physicality, the power, the monster, made in kind of like maybe where Peter could have gone if things kept going in a certain direction. So I think that, whether it's the size of him, the power, the teeth, the smile, the eyes, that's, you want to kind of, stay in a certain wheelhouse. But obviously, what happens in the comics with Eddie is different than what happens with Pete. But in a way, Pete directly or indirectly impacts the host. With Eddie in the comics, Harry in a different way. There's a sense of, with our game, in a way, the metaphorical bond between Harry and the symbiote is they both were rejected by Peter. So they bond over the rejection. So that's what brings them together. And obviously, the symbiote plays upon the fact that Harry is not feeling very well and suffering, and shows him a world where, and then The other thing is when Eddie gets it in the comics, and by the way, I hope I'm not screwing this up, right? Some comic person, but you're so wrong.
You're doing great.
It's a big story of revenge,
yes.
Right? You did this to me, and now I'm going to get back at you.
Yes.
That's not our story. That's not what we do. We do more of like, Pete, I'm going to do this. I'm going to heal the world. I want you next to me. And if you're not next to me, well, I'm going to get you out of the way then. So it was just a different way of doing it. But like, we weren't going to make Venom human size. We weren't going to remove the teeth, and obviously we, as you know, because I know you follow everything. We didn't have all the weaknesses. We reduced the amount of weaknesses to keep things a little bit more comprehensible for players, because everybody's not the hardest of hardcore Marvel fans. But obviously, we would be weird if we did something completely different. So we just minimized it. So it was kind of a story easier for us to tell in many different ways from both gameplay and narrative. So it's just like a mix and match, and we kind of figured out. But like, there's little like, obviously the wings are, even though I think the wings were introduced a long time ago, they become more prevalent again when Ryan Stegman and Donny Cates were working on the Venom books. But we're like, oh, that would be a great way to change up the boss fight, right? And it makes something, show some of the more newer versions, and give those guys, a little more credit and stuff like that. So it's a little mix and matching. It's a little bit what we want to do, what we feel like, it's really core to the experience of Venom, what fans really like, what they're going to enjoy, and then finding areas where we can put our own twist on it.
I think you guys did a great job of not only doing something new and fresh, because already off the bat, like you said, it's not Eddie, it's Harry, but also doing that to really expand upon your own universe and flesh out these characters in new and interesting ways that really honor what they are from the comics, but also, again, innovating and expanding upon the lore and seeing what can we do here to make things feel different and also engaging for the player to see things that may or may not be something that they're familiar with, and kind of, take things out of bounds. That really makes it more engaging for me, even as a gamer, to see where's this going to go next and what could possibly happen to Peter and Harry's dynamic once the game's over, and seeing where that goes. And I was on, the edge of my seat the entire time, so I think you guys did an excellent job. Now, moving on from the story of the game is, of course, the game itself and the gameplay, and how much more expanded and massively overhaul you guys have done with the traversal of the game, of course, with seeing the improvements that we already previously saw from Marvel's Spider-Man 1 to Miles Morales, but now here it's night and day. I mean, of course, you guys are utilizing the full power of the PlayStation 5 to really give that players that sense of speed and momentum through the city, and the web wings are a huge play of that too. But I was personally absolutely blown away by the air tricks that you guys give to Peter in this game, and seeing how much more flair and style that he has, as well as Miles, and giving them that whole new suite of animations when traversing around the city.
You gotta have those new animations. You gotta
do it.
I heard about it after we showed the gameplay reveal. We had to have more swing animations, so I got it.
And you guys delivered. So what was your approach like, really, just for traversal in general, to really just give that huge next step for speed and momentum, to really carry it and feeling like this is the true next-gen step for Spider-Man?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, again, we feel like in Spider-Man 1 and Miles, we did a really good job of that sense of flow and fluidity, and having a level of, feeling like Spider-Man right away, but then having a level of mastery. I feel like we continued that goal going in Spider-Man 2. But we also wanted to, again, like you said, take advantage of the PS5 and really up the speed, and and then obviously, in terms of player fantasy, I don't think I've ever seen the web wings in a console game for Spider-Man. So it was like, hey, let's do it, right? Let's see how that could really change. There are so many times, because we tried as best we could to make sure that the web's attached to a piece of geometry. But there's so many times where you find yourself above geometry and you want to keep going, you want the sense of flow and fluidity to continue. So web wings were really great. I remember being on a live stream with the community team while we were developing Spider-Man 2, and we were doing an anniversary of the remaster, and I was like, I almost said, like, why aren't you popping the web wings? Because I forgot we were playing Spider-Man 1. So I think it was that. We also know there's a player base who wants more customization over fall damage and how much we help, and Again, our basically our head of Traversal, Doug Sheehan, kind of took it upon himself to say, hey, I can add that stuff to it. So, but then in just terms of like the tricks and, I think so much about the Spider-Man experience is that thrill of Traversal and how can we allow players to express themselves. And I think it's been really cool seeing some of the videos that people have put together of Traversal highlights and stuff like that. And it's been really, really cool to see. So I'm obviously extremely proud of whether it's the increased swing speed to the addition of web wings to the increased animation variety to, again, taking advantage of the way it takes advantage of the PlayStation 5. I think the team did a great job.
I tried to personally go back to Marvel Spider-Man 1 just to test out the swinging, and I don't know if I can go back. I mean, like, it's just so night and day seeing how insanely faster the swinging is for Marvel Spider-Man 2, and I still love the previous games, but in terms of speed and how much differentiation there can be when incorporating the tricks and also interacting with the environment with corner tethering and slingshotting and of course mixing all that with the web wings and air tricks, just beautiful. It's amazing. But
I said I wanted two things. I wanted the loop-de-loop and the web wings.
There you go.
Two things I said. And there you go.
And they're easily the best parts about the Traversal, hands down. Especially going through the wind tunnels and catching that, gust. It feels awesome.
And the wind tunnels were an idea. The wind tunnels weren't originally in the plans. That was something that the team just kind of thought about how we can accentuate, Traversal and, get people going from point A to point B faster. It was really, I think it was Doug and Josue that really took that upon themselves. I'm sure there's other people. I apologize, I left people out. But it was my idea, for to tell you that much. But it really was pretty cool. Just, again, it shows off, accentuates the web wings. It shows off this Traversal speed. But I also think it just makes exploring the city even more fun.
And it's perfect that you just mentioned the city, because that is one of the biggest highlights about the game, is just how much more alive New York feels. I mean, of course you have even more packed streets with higher amounts of traffic and citizens walking around, but even if you stop and take the time just to walk around the streets, you see different citizen body types and different races and ethnicities, and a lot more culture being incorporated into Marvel's New York to make it feel extremely genuine and authentic. And even I was replaying the game again yesterday, and during the story there's even an entire sequence where Miles is talking to Rio over the phone, and he's completely speaking in Spanish. No, just a full conversation between them, just in their own, dialect. And it's fantastic to see that much representation, but also, genuine impact and depth that you provide within the city to make it feel more alive. How'd you go about really developing that throughout the game's core process of making it different from the first game?
I think for us it's about, looking at the world today and trying to make sure we represent it in the right way, being respectful, and we do a lot of research. The team proactively does a lot to reach out to different people, to make sure different groups. We use some consultants sometimes, just to make sure that we are doing things the right way. And because, the last thing you want to do is have a good intention and then do something that people feel like you're, either you didn't get all the way, or God forbid, it comes across as disrespectful. That would be worse than any review score we got, right? You don't want to hurt somebody with a good intention. So, we have a diverse team that really cares about this stuff, and obviously representation matters a ton, and that we want to make sure that anything we can do, we try to do with the time we have. Just being open to hearing different perspectives and different things, and realizing that you may not know everything. I as the creative director may not know everything, and you got to lean on people who do know more. And for example, all the work we've done, obviously with Haley, even that opening scene, making sure that, that part of the classroom has somebody, doing sign language. And, at one point someone goes, oh, well, there's someone sitting in front of her. We have to clear the way so Haley can see it. And I didn't notice that other people in the team, consultants we work with, anybody we can to make sure we're representing in the right way. So I'm really proud that the team prioritizes it, cares about it, and that it's a group effort. It's not one person coming at it. It's everybody contributing to it. And I think that it's really, 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 really important. It's not just a nice to have, it's a must have.
I think that perfectly shines through with a lot of the side missions that you incorporate within the game, where you get to show so many different aspects of New York in so many beautiful ways. Of course, the big one that everyone's talking about is the Howard mission, and the mission where you have to find the lost grandfather in Brooklyn. And also, I was totally blown away by this, is that you could play as Haley. Just as a short little side mission, just seeing that come to life. And even you not only have the smaller missions, but the bigger ones too, with Chameleon coming in and the flame and where that leads to, potential story stuff down the line. How'd you really go about like manifesting these side missions to give so much depth and life to making Marvel's New York feel even more huge in scope and scale compared to what we've seen previously?
It's an easy answer. It's not me. It's the team. Let's take two examples. The Howard mission that was created during a game jam that we did at the end of one year. A designer by the name of Brian Matheson had this idea. I believe Brian actually made the opening mission with Sandman, and he's probably one of the most creative people I've ever met on the design side. And I believe he was somehow involved in the pigeons of Spider-Man 1, and he had this idea. And it was never originally planned for the game, and he put together this little prototype of the Howard mission, and everybody in the team fell in love with it. And myself and the game director, Ryan Smith, just go, we got to put this in the game. We got to figure out a way to get it in. And then more recently, Haley, I believe that was the idea of Brittany, one of our writers. And she was like, this would be really, really, how can we, everybody in the team loves Haley. I think fans love Haley, and like, how can we get more time with her, and how can we show her somewhat, basically be a hero in her own way, right? And that was not on the schedule. It was not, quite frankly, it was thinking about just the overall, are we gonna get this game done and get it on time and everything else we had to make. It was a challenge, and the credit to the team, they figured it out. They got creative, they figured it out. People were excited, they put in the extra effort. So I think, what I have learned in now, I think 9 years of working on this franchise, is when people are passionate about working on something, you just get out of their freaking way and help them with what they do. And I think that's good examples of things that weren't exactly planned for the game, but now looking back, could you imagine shipping the game without it? I think that's two good examples. And again, that's the credit to the entire team, that they are continually looking from the day we start to the day we finish of how we make the game better. And then if the team is excited about it, we roll with it and we make another adjustments as we do. But again, it's not me, it's the team. And my job is just to clear away so they can do great things.
I think that totally also lays into the element of the tagline of the game, even like what you said about the team working, being greater together. It's a huge collaborative effort to make these things, and seeing how everyone gets to pour their own heart and soul into it and sharing their own personal identity into this piece of art is fantastic. And seeing so many new elements and aspects being thrown into the game, but also the lore of Spider-Man, and again doing that huge new thing of having Haley be shown in such a big way is going to have a lot of impact, I think, on a lot of people who get their hands on it. And I think that leads me to my final question, which, again, thank you so much for your time, Bryan, because knowing how we've been able to interact so many times throughout the years on this huge journey from the first game to Miles to now, seeing how you now have 3 fully established Spider-Man games in this universe, and then you have a lot of stuff coming in the future with, Wolverine and a lot of stuff that in Insomniac's pipeline, how does it feel knowing that this universe of Spider-Man could be someone's first ever time experiencing this character? I mean, for me, I grew up with the Tobey Maguire films, and even one of my buddies, he grew up with the Andrew Garfield films, and even some people start with the comics or the shows. But for me, I've always been a gamer since I was a kid, and I remember fondly playing through the Neversoft games and all that, and seeing these characters be shown in this way through games is unlike anything I could have ever dreamed of. So for you and the whole team, how does it feel seeing that this could be someone's first step into the wider world of Spider-Man?
Well, I mean, I think it's a responsibility we don't take lightly. I try not to think of it like that, because that might be a little overwhelming for me.
Sorry.
Personally. but I do think that we don't assume that anybody's ever played any of the other Spider-Man games or our Spider-Man. Like, if they can't, we're hoping that you load up Spider-Man 2 that you haven't played Spider-Man 1 or Miles, you could follow along. Now, obviously, if you play those other games, some things will connect more than others. But I think for us is, I remember what it was like to be a little kid loving Spider-Man, and I kind of said recently is like, I just want to make the game in a way that kid would enjoy it and would be happy and be proud and, not be upset and posting things online about it. But I think that, we care about the franchise. We're fans ourselves. And, if you treat it seriously, treat it with respect, I think that's our thing. Like, we're, I've heard, we're not embarrassed of anything related to like them wearing, these suits that are, tight skin. That's awesome. That's cool. That's great. We celebrate it. We want to celebrate the amazing years of this character and what Marvel has done through comics, through games, through TV shows, through movies. And if we can be a part of that, in any way and help accentuate that and I would say make people even bigger fans of the character, or bring people into a world where what I hope is if they play the game, they're like, well, what else? And maybe they're not the biggest, Marvel fans, but they play the game and they're like, oh, I want to know more about these characters. I want to know more about, I start reading the comics or reading comics about other superheroes or go and see movies. And, I would loved, that someone went into a comic book store because they played the game, wanted to know more about Marvel or more about any superhero, anything. So I think, it's really cool. I try not to think of it that big because that would be too scary. It's like I said, it's a big responsibility, but we have really awesome jobs and we know how lucky we are.
And I think with that, it just leaves me as someone who's able to be lucky enough to talk to you, is just on behalf of all Spider-Man fans, thank you for how much work and effort that you and the entire team pour into these games. And I think that the future for the franchise could go next is looking very, very bright, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you very much.